Breaking broadcast. I think we're live. Live breaking broadcast. Okay, enough of that. So today's episode is called Paris False Flag, and we're going to have Richard Heathen on of Liberty Machine News and youtube.com/deathmetalpatriot. What camera should I be looking at? Which camera are you? Not even at the control room, probably off doing drugs somewhere. You and your toque and your beard, you look all sketchy. Anyway, so is Paris false flag? I'm going to say probably not. Of course, I don't know for sure, but I'm just going to say, given the evidence that I've seen so far, although I've got some great, crazy evidence to go over. A friend sent it to me. I'm not sure if he was serious or what the deal was about sending that to me, but if you send me information, I'm going to talk about it on the show. So it might just be a one-time thing. But anyway, I got some crazy, awesome evidence to go over. Like, the blood was smeared, and the rock band didn't jump off the stage right away. Therefore, a hoax. Or the other one with the it's always like a brunette girl that's crying, and it's like, oh, same girl, and like Paris, like, no, it's obviously not the same girl. That's she just got brunette. She's a brunette, like. White people with brown hair, I guess they all tend to look the same depending on who. I wonder if that's it. Like some 16-year-old Asian conspiracy theorist in his basement, like, oh, look at all these people, they all look the same. It's like, yeah, because they're all white. But so that's what I'm thinking. Here, let me pull up today's show just in case we have something going on in the chat. I haven't had any chat activity since the election show. You guys, I know people are watching this afterwards, and you gotta tune into the live show. Otherwise, I can't converse with you. Anyway, so we got Richard Heathen of Death Metal Patriot, Liberty Machine News. He's going to come on. He's going to talk about Western civilization too. Should we start talking about Western civilization in the past tense? Seems like it's over. Like maybe between maybe Friday the 13th and 9/11, that was like the middle ground. We're like, oh, what's going on? And now I think tomorrow it's like, no, it's over. It's Western civilization. We speak that as something from the past. Okay, yeah. So I had this really dark joke. I don't even think it's that funny, but okay. So why was Paris attacked? Because it's 2015. Get it? Because that's what I told you it wasn't funny. It's because Justin Trudeau is always saying, oh, maybe his genderless female male cabinet, Swiss gender cabinet. They asked him, well, why did you do that? Why did you make half of them female, even if they weren't qualified? He's like, it's 2015. That was his answer. It was just to say the date. It was, hey, why did we do this? Why did we do that? Oh, it's 2015. Oh, why do we keep centralizing power into the hands of Ottawa? Oh, well, it's 2015. As if we're always progressing. So as long as the years keep going forward, which they always do, then, therefore we're progressing. Even if we're getting poorer, even if the state's getting more powerful, even if we're just resembling modern day serfs, it's 2015. Which is why I am not wearing a hat today. I decided to spike up my hair. And I'm wearing two collars. You can't see this at home, Luke, but you'll see it in the rerun. I'm wearing two collars because it's 2015. I thought I'd be like, this could be a whole episode around 2015, how it's 2015, all the progressive stuff we have, it's 2015. But no, 2015 is apparently where you can't go out to movie theaters and shit without getting shot anymore. And, or bombed. It's not just in Paris. There was a train bombing back in 2004. There's all this shit's been going on for a long time, but maybe I'm just in my own circle jerk of an echo chamber, but it seems like a lot of people aren't buying this more war is going to fix it this time. Like after 9/11, it was a foregone conclusion. If you weren't for war, they probably would have stuck you in a concentration camp. And then since then, it's like people just tried to ignore when terrorist things happen, and then when they do happen, it's like, oh, well, we need to fight them over there, so we're not fighting them here. I think people are starting to clue in that fighting them over there is what's causing them to want to fight us here. Okay, so the best solution, of course, is to do nothing. And the reason I bring this up is for a while I've been thinking, yeah, like I said, I was just in this circle jerk of an echo chamber. But the National Post has got like two editorials out today about how we need to go bomb Syria even more. And
let
all the
refugees in. Like.
Yeah, but all the it seems like all the majority of the comments were like, no, war's not a good idea. No, this won't help. No, this will just make them mad. So, maybe we're getting somewhere. Maybe this Paris is the beginning of the end of statism. Who knows? That'd be a nice thought. Nice, Luke. This is a nice thought.
Nice thought. It's my wet dream.
Yeah, my wet dream. Yeah, anarchy. All Western civilization just crumbles. Or the states, it crumbles. All of it crumbles. And out of the ashes, we build a new anarchy. Anarchy! It reminds me of a Whitest Kids You Know sketch. So anyway, double collar, crazy hair, making fun of Trudeau because it's 2015. But then the whole Paris thing happens. So we're gonna have Richard Heathen on, and we're gonna discuss that more in detail. Maybe either before or after he leaves. He'll be on like 15 minutes, I believe. But maybe before or after, I'll go over this article here. Let me say the title. I'll tell you the title, Luke. You're going to get a kick out of this. You're going to love this. So it's from this website. I'm not sure if I should say the website. I don't really give them that much. Well, fuck it. I'll say it. 300spartans.com.au. Have you ever heard of this 300 Spartans?
Well, I heard about the Spartans.
I have also heard of a Spartan, 300 of them. No, okay, so the headline is Busted. Totally proved, all doubt, the French government staged the attacks. And then it's got a picture without warning of, inside that the theater with blood smeared and all the people dead. So yeah, busted, totally proved beyond all doubt the French government staged the attacks, rounded up future victims after they left the Balakan. Am I saying that right? Balakan? Balakan? What was the place called? I'm just butchering it. I'm not good at French, and I haven't been watching a lot of the coverage. But anyway, after they left the Bataclan, murdered them while they were in custody, and then set up the bloody scene with their bodies. So pretty much what this article is saying, what it's going to attempt to prove, hey, a dog just came in here. What it's going to attempt to prove is that the whole thing was set up, the French authorities, I'm assuming the French authorities, it says French government, arrested the people, took them out back somewhere, I suppose, shot them, and then brought them back and set up their bodies in a bloody mess to make it look like it was French terrorists.
So they shot them in a different location and they just dragged all their bodies there?
That's what I suppose. That's what the article is saying. It is kind of half-assed reasoned, and that's...
So how do they say, okay, so what's the reasoning behind that? Like what's their
Okay, so this is what's great. So it starts with oh shit, I lost it. With a glitch in the Mexican media has proven that the French government murdered victims while in custody of the authorities. We definitely have a lot of dead people in these terror attacks, and it looks like none of them died in the name of Islam. And they say, okay, so the smoking gun apparently is this one Mexican girl who is apparently confirmed alive when the shooting took place. Her family called her. And her family called her boyfriend's phone after hearing about the shooting. So he said, oh yeah, he said he was with her outside and they were both fine. And now after the authorities took her into custody, she is dead. Busted, busted, busted. There were no terrorists. The French government did it. So what I'm seeing is like the Mexican family called the boyfriend to make sure that she was okay. And the boyfriend, either there's miscommunication somewhere, or the boyfriend just lied, said that she was okay because he didn't want to scare her. Meanwhile, he's around, he has no fucking clue what's going on, where they are, and it turns out, no, she was one of the victims that died. So far from a smoking gun, this is a very reasonable explanation for this, but this is like the basis that this article goes on. So, the premise is flawed, all the conclusions are going to be flawed, but no, let's keep going. And, then he thinks, let's see, what else is happening? Dead body looked real. That's the other thing. Things look like they should be fake. They look like they're real. Like, you need evidence. You just can't say, well, it seemed like it.
Yeah.
I don't know. What would you say to Luke if I came up to you? If you had no idea what the show was about, all you knew is I was going to talk about this. What if I came on the show and said, Luke, the whole thing was a hoax. It was an inside job. It was all staged. There is no France. Europe doesn't exist, man. They got you in a fucking box thinking other continents exist. So, Luke, please, what would you say to someone like that?
Obviously, I'd first be set up, and I'd ask them for the reasoning. I'd try to find the basis for their conclusion, or I'd just say that maybe just off if I had an idea of whatever they're talking about, I'd say that they're crazy.
It's easy to call people crazy, but it's hard to argue with people who won't follow the rules of logic. That's impossible to do, because like if it was a false flag or some kind of like setup thing, this is what I'm also finding with what's going on here. A lot of people are saying conspiracy till proven otherwise. So it's
what? How is that?
I know. That's like taking logic and going upside down with it. That's
how does that?
Well, I'm assuming it's your mindset.
How do you say something like that? Make a declarative sentence and then not back it up and then say it's the fact until proven otherwise.
Yeah,
it's
you can say
you're making the claim.
You can prove. I know you can prove anything with that. Like I'm a black Jew until you can prove that I'm not. No, I'm clearly not a black Jew.
I can say that there's 52 different categories of unicorns, and it's up to you to disprove me. It's like, no, that's not the way it works. It's called the burden of proof. It's on the person who makes the claim. Like,
but
it isn't for me to, like...
If your worldview allows for unicorns, it's not a far-fetched like jump to say, okay, well, there's probably be about 52 categories of unicorns. Justin Trudeau is a unicorn.
Oh,
so there,
that.
you're there. I found a hole in your logic. Busted, Luke. You're a fucking shill. Shill for the New World Order.
Fuck. They're going to cut my funding. Fuck. Big oil. Fuck.
Yeah, I know. We're all going to lose out on this. I'm going to get kicked off the internet. They keep trying to block my videos over copyright music. But no, it's not that. It's because what I'm talking about is the truth. Anyway, fuck. So yeah, they take. So the less probable thing is discarded, or no, the more probable thing is just discarded. Like you need evidence for what's kind of common sense or just what should be your basic analysis going into the situation. That is all out of the window for evidence, like additional evidence that needs to be presented before you can make that assertion. But they're already making that assertion and saying that you need additional evidence.
Imagine if forensics and all this other shit was like that. Like,
what
type of world would we live in? Like,
yeah, we'd all be going to jail, and then it's guilty until that's what it is. It's guilty until proven innocent. Like you've already come to the conclusion that it's some kind of hoax, and then you're just looking for all the evidence to support it. It's just confirmation bias, right?
Exactly. Yeah, confirmation bias.
But like this article here, like how many people have to be in on this in order to have, like who blew it? They blew it. They blew it. There were no Arabs. The French government did this and got their body count by murdering people in custody. Okay, well somebody murdered people in custody. Like there got to be like well-paid police officers. French government who can't even bomb a country right. So that's really what it is. It doesn't have to be a false flag because your blowback theory, it makes sense. The blowback theory makes sense. It's obviously blowback. That's the thing nobody's talking about. So on one side you got the mainstream media who's saying stop claiming refugees. We need to let more in. And this is because they hated our freedom and they have an evil ideology and they just want to kill us. That's the mainstream thing. And then I've noticed even with a few libertarians, and maybe Richard can comment on this when he comes on, is just people who are putting way more thought in the whole stop multiculturalism, stop immigration, stop the Islam. Islam is not compatible with Western civilization. Okay, you might be right in a lot of degrees, but a private property order is going to fix that. That we can all agree that anarchy is the way to fix these problems, whether it's terrorism, whatever the fuck it is. This big solution here is what I'm not seeing from anybody. Nobody wants to say this, is that it's the war. Well, other than, Ron Paul, and I guess, I'm sure Alex Jones was saying, yeah, of course he did. I watched the video. He said some stuff about this. The bombing in Syria is what caused this. The war is the biggest issue.
And it's not like terrorism is war. That's what happens when you go to war.
Yeah, we're fighting a private terrorist organization with the name state in it, and they've conquered a bunch of land. So at what point are they a state? But careful with that, because if we are fighting a state and not just some organization, now NATO, like the Section 5 or whatever, the NATO thing will be invoked now. we'll have to go to war with ISIS because France was attacked, and we're all a big part of this big NATO family. So, no, it's foreign intervention is what caused this, because we've been, it's a whack-a-mole game in the Middle East where we're just knocking off secular dictators. Started with, Hussein. That's like Iraq is a shithole. As you know, ISIS occupies a lot of Iraq. They filled in that vacuum. We were told Al-Qaeda was in Iraq. They weren't in Iraq. They weren't responsible for 9/11. None of the things for going to war with Iraq ended up being true, and now we have ISIS as a result of it. And like their solution is, well, we need to go to war again. No, war is what caused this. War is listen to what this is. Maybe ISIS, it's the open call to ISIS and all the young kids that are joining them. Maybe not, maybe all of you shouldn't die in the next terrorist attack. Maybe you should leave a couple of you around so you can help explain your actions, because they're lying to us in the media. They're giving us bullshit answers. So, next suicide bombing, if there's 5 of you, just set 4 of them off and let one of you get arrested. But of course, I'm pretty sure the cops would just shoot them on sight. So, there goes that plan. But it's serious. Fucking listen to what they're saying. There's it's not, it's this hateful, hateful ideology, but it's also because we're bombing them. It's I know if, teenage, because a lot of these ISIS guys are young guys, and it's not if they were living in a more civilized civilization, and I don't mean just Western, I mean if they could have their own Islamic state, the way they want it, just fucking leave them alone. Have it the way they want, so it's a good standard of living. They're living their lives the way they want to. No one's interfering with their private property. That would not drive them to want to go on suicide missions. A suicide mission is pretty fucking hardcore. You're willing to die for that belief. You're willing to let other it's denying yourself for that bigger collective, right? So that people just don't do that willy-nilly. They do that because they have a reason, and it's clearly because we've been bombing their families. I'm pretty sure I would join some fucking rebel organization if Iran or some foreign country bombed Ontario, killed most of my friends and family. Fuck yeah, I'd probably join some rebel organization that wanted to go over there and blow up their children. It's just it's human nature, and it's evil, and it's
a cycle of hatred.
It's hatred. It's cycle of hatred and violence. That's well put, Luke. That's what it is. And you're not gonna break that cycle with more violence.
Yeah, it's like saying, okay, I have this boiling pot of water and I want to make it cool by turning up the temperature.
That's that's pretty much it. Yeah. So we got this boiling water of Syria just spilling all over the edges. Let's say the stove is Europe, so it's getting all over the place. The water is boiling, getting all over the place. And their solution, holy shit, Europe's getting burnt. Let's turn that shit up. Let's turn up the boiling water that is Syria in the Middle East.
Oh no, what's happening?
Let's pick it up and pour.
The fucking stove.
Yeah.
My stove.
My stove. Oh, what's going on? Just pouring it everywhere. So I guess it's a false flag in the sense, the government did this. The government fucking created the conditions for this to happen. So so that's what people changing their flags or their profile picture, Facebook profile picture to the French flag. Have you seen that? Oh yeah, that's a great fucking idea. Yeah. Let's empower the state that caused these conditions.
Yeah, and then you put up their fucking flag. It's those people are dead because the state who steals their money was involved in something that caused a whole lot of death and all that other shit, and now it came full circle. Then you're gonna celebrate by remember them by putting up a flag that was the reason why they got fucking killed. This whole cult of statism that they went over.
Cult. Yeah, exactly. A cult of statism. So, it's disgusting. But it is what it is. It's unfortunate that, I don't know. I don't know how well is the war propaganda going to sell this time. I don't think it's going to be nothing will ever be as successful as 9/11 was. That was so outside of the frame of everybody's reference that, the people still fucking haven't gotten over it. And so I don't think we're going to see something like that again. But certainly, I'm sure the French people are going to want to fucking go to war. But, Canadians, especially if my guesstimation that Canadians don't like war, hopefully, that plays out. Is Trudeau just going to, put his hands behind his back, say, my hands are tied, it's a NATO thing, or, are we just going to help in humanitarian missions, and that's going to be better? Seems like that's the route that we were already going towards with Syria and the Middle East, was that, we're not going to bomb them anymore, we'll just help them with our humanitarian training, which is, it's the same shit. But now with this whole French thing, maybe the war propaganda will be taken up a notch. Maybe people will be convinced that bombing Syria is the way to go, getting rid of Assad. But it's the internet. The internet isn't the way it was. The internet's way more advanced now than it was in 2001. So it's really the internet. Internet is where people are getting this contrary opinions. The opinions like my own. But anyway, it's 4:30. Is Richard online yet? Richard, where you at, Richard Heathen? No, all right. I thought I heard a noise in there, the Skype noise. Oh well. Okay, well, we'll come back to fair. Here, let me finish up this the crazy article here. So leave off where we were. The French government murdered all these people, and I guess they took them out back. They shot them. They brought them back in. They smeared their blood all over the ground, and apparently this one Mexican victim is the smoking gun. So this whole article is based off just this one French or this one Mexican. The Mexican girl, she was alive, but then she's not alive. And that's what's great. All it is just it's a mix up of communication. But this article builds a whole conspiracy from it that is, they were taken out back, they were shot, they were brought back in. Like, you need way more evidence to prove that kind of theory. Yeah. Than this random, we thought the Mexican girl was alive, but turns out she's dead. That's... But,
which seems like if you're in that situation, that's, it's kind of like telling a white lie, right? Just so it's kind of like a peace of mind type of thing. Like, everyone's freaking out. Like, even if you don't know, maybe he just saw her before he, went outside or whatever it may be. Like, there's so many different things, right?
Yeah, and if everyone you're shocked, you're scared. Everyone's probably got a bunch of blood all over them. You think the pictures I've seen, people, splattered with blood. So if you got, maybe you just didn't recognize her. Maybe maybe it's some other Mexican girl. It's like, there he is, she's safe, and he's all disoriented. Like, this is. It's kind of like the Sandy Hook people. Remember, the conspiracy theorists would say, the father was laughing. You're not supposed to laugh when your child dies. Like, do you have any idea how fucking mourning works? Like, when you mourn you're allowed to laugh and cry and yell, and it's not the fucking movies. But anyway, I think we've got Richard Heathen online. Richard, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You're not going to be able to see me. And I'm on...
I can see Lucas.
You can see Lucas, that's good. And we're about to see you. There you are.
There we are. How you doing, man?
Oh, not bad. Yourself?
Oh, I'm all right.
It's been a crazy few days with what's going on around the world. So what's your take on this thing?
Well, a lot of people are looking for a conspiracy theory, and I've got one for you. The government disarms its population, opens up the floodgates to people from an incompatible culture, bombs and invades them, and then people are surprised when there's terrorist attacks.
It's an open conspiracy. It's right there. Anyone's paying attention can see this happening. France has been on high alert ever since Charlie Hebdo. Yeah. So that alert never went down. It's been like high alert the whole year. They've been one of the most aggressive people in Syria other than the United States. So this should not be surprising to anybody.
No, of course not. It's really just foreign interventionism gone awry. And there's other factors at work too, such as you're importing people from a war zone, a fucking war zone. Like, you wonder if they might have a bone to pick. Mm-hmm. A lot of these people, these Syrian refugees, they're not just from Syria. They're from Afghanistan, Iraq, and a bunch of other places. So, it's a bad situation, and I consider a great betrayal of the governments. Like, yeah, if you're an ANCAP, you're like, oh, government's bad, fine, but most people, government is supposed to have a monopoly on certain services, right? That's security, healthcare, and all this stuff. So there's some sort of duties that they're supposed to perform, and I think they've completely and utterly betrayed their people and failed. So
yeah, they can't
I
even
think
do.
it's time for Europeans to rise up against their governments, because they're not only are they creating this perfect climate of war and aggression, they're disarming you so you can't even fight back.
Exactly. Yeah, they can't even do their basic functions right. Like, minarchists out there that say, we need a government for at least, the police and the courts. Like, this is their one fucking thing. They can't even do that right. You just got to protect people and their property, and you've got, these nationals and homegrown extremists and fucking people coming from all over the place. With what you're right, in an incompatible culture. Islam, and that's has always been separate from what's known as Western civilization. That's not to say that people from those countries can't come live here any more than we can go live there. But obviously, we need a fucking better system, which is why we're anarchists. We're all anarchists here. But what you're saying,
if you want to talk about the difference between Islam and the West, I think there's two really big ones. Number one is the separation of church and state. The very existence of Sharia law negates that. That is like a codified legal system built into their religion. So the whole concept of a separation of church and state is very foreign to Islam. So they're going to have to go through their own kind of enlightenment process where they separate the church from the state. Another one is universal ethics. Universal ethics is something that, is Western, as is even Christian. I'm not a Christian. I'm agnostic. I'm not religious. But I think that, Christians, they do have universal values, love your enemy, all that kind of stuff. Whereas Islam, it's taqiyya. You're not supposed to take friends who are non-believers, and you're always supposed to have a different set of ethics for believers than non-believers. You're supposed to treat preferentially your fellow Muslims as opposed to infidels, right? So there's not universal ethics. There's two sets of rules, and it's okay to lie and cheat a non-Muslim, but it's not okay to do that to a Muslim. So universal ethics, I think, is a big thing that separates the West from Islam.
Yeah, especially when you consider that the very first centuries, because a lot of people will always say, Christians, they had the Crusades and all that, they were just as violent. But like the very first, they did, true. But the very first centuries of Christian religion, it was spread through just persuasion. A lot of people just they just latched onto the idea because they wanted to. With Islam or the Muslims, the Prophet Muhammad, after that, it was like they forced it. It was conquest. That was mostly how that religion was spread. Was by force.
They got the sympathies of some people because they were every religion starts out as an oppressed minority, but then when they would attack, because Islam is not like a live and let live religion. It's more like, we're going to take over. That's the caliphate. They want a global Islam. They think there's not going to be peace until the whole world converts to Islam, right? So they're thinking basically that they had to be nice at first, but then as soon as they got they built any ground, then they started to antagonize people, right? Yeah. So it's just a different belief system, and I think that it's uncomfortable for people to acknowledge because the fear of being labeled a racist, but I just don't think that fear doesn't erase reality, right?
Yeah. But another interesting thing I would think through this is it is like Islam is not like, it's not a religion, it's a whole legal system, it's a whole everything, it's a whole different culture. But in the same way, and like one of the things they haven't done is that separation of church and church and state. But we've kind of reverted back on that too. So I understand when people come at us and say, Western civilization is like I was saying to Luke at the start of the show, maybe we should start talking about Western civilization in past tense, because what we have now is kind of like it's the same radical extremism that we're fighting. It's just a secular democratic religion. We won't stop war until we've made the world safe for democracy. The same kind of ideology they have about we're not going to stop until the whole world is Islam. And with the exception, though, of, you're right, the government's sold us out. They've disarmed us, and now they're letting in this incompatible civilization, people who follow the tenets of this incompatible civilization with Western culture. But yeah, problem here is governments, as far as I see. They're the ones intervening in Syria. They're the ones destroying Western civilization with multiculturalism, with forced integration that we call immigration, but it's really just forced integration.
No, the state is, in the long way, it is the primary evil. But I think that too many ANCAPs and too many libertarians, they don't understand the importance of culture. I think, God, I tried trying to find this quote, but it's a Rothbard quote, and where he talks about the difference of the nation and the state. Nation is a shared cultural belief system, a shared heritage, that kind of thing. Whereas the state is of course the state, right? Is the infrastructure of government. Mm-hmm. So I think it's something to be said for culturally homogenous societies. I think in a true free market, if like all of a sudden the state collapsed and the communists didn't need us all, I think that what would happen is you'd eventually see people segregating into culturally homogenous zones. You'd have the Islamic people, they'd have their own space, and then you'd have other groups of people that would have their own space. And I don't. This forced integration, I think, is actually unnatural.
It is, yeah.
It does lead to a lot of conflict.
No, yeah, I agree. I think in a totally free market society, people are going to split off and go live with the people they want to live with. And it's those, communes where there's no private property and we're all equal. Those will just fade away. Those they won't actually. They might go form something, but eventually they'll all die off.
Yeah.
Well, that's the problem too with the collectivists and communists and stuff. Like, imagine the state did disappear tomorrow. They would form their own collective commune, and it would fail. Mm-hmm. And they would try it and take what people who have something have, right? They would be the barbarians at the gates, the communists. Yeah. They would be the ones who were trying to take the fruitful, productive wealth of free society. So, I really agree with that Hoppe quote that a free society can't suffer communists or Democrats. Yeah,
it can be no tolerance. Yeah, because you think once their whole society goes, like the whole fucking commune collapse, where are they going to go? They're going to go back to these, rich capitalist societies, conservative leaning, and they're going to, they're probably going to want to work there and have a standard of living, but then they're going to want to, start spreading these ideas again, because they're fucking communists, and that's.
It's true. Though.
It's true.
These people, like, they're relentless.
They are, and that's why there could be no tolerance.
Too. It's ridiculous.
No tolerance towards them. So people talk about, freedom of speech is a libertarian thing. Like, no. There's no absolute freedom of speech. If you are on my property or in my community of property owners and you're spreading democratic or communist ideas, I will fucking throw your ass in prison, okay? My private-owned prison. Right. I'll push you out to the margins, but no one's going to want you. You'll be labeled the fucking, I was going to say heathen, but that's your last name, Richard.
Yeah. No, you will be ostracized and basically thrown out like the fucking pariah and trash you are. Yeah. I'm sorry. The more I see cultural Marxism, the more I see all this this extreme leftism taking hold, the more hostile I've become to it. Like, it's really getting bad.
Mm-hmm. Real bad.
I'm still trying to find that Rothbard quote. It's here somewhere.
Well, in the meantime, maybe I'll mention that. So, so we were talking about the Hoppe quote, like I posted to a wall on Facebook, the Libertarian Nationalist Group. Can you explain what a Libertarian Nationalist is? It's in my head, it's kind of like a Rothbardian Hoppian.
Well, it kind of, that's one aspect of it. Libertarian Nationalism is really less concerned with the abolition of the state or lack thereof. I'm still a, I think the free market can provide the services much better of that government provides, so I'm still anti-state. But also it's about, number one, it's hostile to the left. It's, it completely rejects any sort of concept of left-wing egalitarianism. We're not equal. No two human beings are equal. Man, woman. No man's even equal to himself on different days, right? There's just, there's equality just doesn't exist. You can't even you can't have equality of even opportunity because we're all born into different circumstances. So it's an outright rejection of leftist egalitarianism.
Yeah,
And it's all
especially in the morning too. You're not equal to yourself on the same day. Yeah, most mornings I'm hungover, so by later on in the day I'm way better than I was in the morning.
Exactly. And another part is a celebration of Western culture, Western chauvinism. We openly acknowledge and where liberty came from, and that is the Occident. That is Western ideas, right? Liberty comes from the Western ideas of, you pointed out before, common law. All these things come from the Western tradition.
Mm-hmm.
So, the John Locke, the Magna Carta, they all come from the Western tradition. So that's just fact. It is, it's not racially driven. You can,
anyone can adopt the idea. Yeah.
Anyone can adopt the ideas and understand that this is a very productive system that creates wealth. So, it's funny because I've had a few people come on there and call us fascists. Well, no, we're not fascists. We're libertarians who are Western chauvinists, right?
Yeah.
So those are the important things. It's also, as a result of, hardcore leftist egalitarianism, I've seen the rise. A lot of libertarians and ANCAPs have actually left libertarianism because libertarianism has been too opening to them. So I've seen a lot of people going. Are you familiar with the Dark Enlightenment?
The Dark Enlightenment? No, I don't think so.
Neo-reactionaryism. Basically, they're fascists. They like, in their own words, they don't call themselves fascists, but their system is like one of government and corporate solidification of power and running the business, running the affairs of government like a business. And then any interest you'd go in there, you'd pay your taxes and be a consumer, but any interest in the way the government is run would basically render you a criminal. So it's basically fascism, right? And I think we're headed for prolonged societal upheaval. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create a safety net with libertarian nationalism, saying, no, you don't have to become a fascist. You can come over here and still be a libertarian. So, because also I think that when we see this prolonged period of social unrest, then people will be inclined to run to a strong man, people who are saying, promising them things, and from a strong paternal point of view, because, I think the left wing is very maternal, but it's going to fail, and people are like, hey, no, we need someone who will promote a security. So I'm trying to provide an alternative, a safety net, so when the reactionaries who have had their fill of far left-wing egalitarianism don't go all the way to the fascist side. They just come to another faction of libertarianism and still believe in the non-aggression principle and property rights and all those things, right? Instead of going somewhere else and joining, getting behind some strong man that's going to usher in some hard times, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, no, it's good strategy. And
like a catch net.
Sorry, go ahead, Luke.
It's kind of like a catch net, right?
Yeah, a safety net.
Yeah.
Safety net, so these people don't, and I'm hoping to bring some people back from the dark side, from the dark enlightenment. It's like, hey, you can be a libertarian again. You don't have to associate with all these leftist assholes. And I think, and I think a lot of the people, they do have a point. I kind of flirted with the dark enlightenment for a while because I was very disillusioned with a lot of libertarian sucking up to the left, and I genuinely consider the left-wing egalitarianism and the whole ideas coming from the underlying philosophy of the left to be incompatible with libertarianism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not a question of, libertarians, you're to the right on economic issues and you're to the left on social issues. Like, no, their idea of social issues is so alien to what we're talking about when we talk about, civil society and more social issues. Because the way we see it, of course, like all social issues are economic issues, more or less.
Well, too, but the thing is, you can be a social libertine, and I can say, okay, I don't, a socially degenerate libertine, and I can be like, okay, well, I'm not going to use force against you, but I don't want to associate you, and I don't want you on my property.
Yeah.
That's one way of.
Oh, you're just a libertarian brutalist. That's what you are. Don't you read Jeffrey Tucker? He's so enlightened. He's so progressive.
It's a lot of it. Kind of comes out. Libertarian nationalism kind of comes out of libertarian brutalism, but it's gone away with the degeneracy that was part of libertarian brutalism, and is especially like the tranny porn and all that. And it's just a philosophy that's libertarianism and realizes that, you know what, at some point we might have to take up arms to defend liberty, and we celebrate Western culture.
Huh.
The theory of the homeland of liberty. And people will say that's racist because, you know, how dare you celebrate anything that comes from Europe or has anything to do with people with pale skin.
Yeah, pretty much. That's what multiculturalism means. It means celebrating all other cultures and hating Western culture.
Yes.
That's pretty much multiculturalism in a nutshell. But what I like about this is like it's the Hoppian right libertarianism. And I once read a critique of his whole right-wing libertarianism where it's he's saying the author was critiquing Hans Hermann Hoppe, and he was saying he's taking all the bad things about libertarianism. He's saying, yeah, it's a good thing. It mostly is, he's saying it's the tyranny of capital. You know, those who have all the capital, they'll decide what your freedom of speech is and how much you have it. But no, it was a poor critique by a left wing. I just thought it was funny that he's saying, like, he's taking all the bad things about libertarianism and he's saying, yeah, it's actually a good thing. But
coming from a leftist, I consider that to be a compliment.
Yeah, me too. I loved it. I love reading criticisms of Hoppe because he's such a genius that they hear like these stupid left-wing bloggers or left-wing libertarian bloggers be like, oh, well, he's wrong for this reason. I'm like, nope, you totally didn't get the argument. Went right over your head. But they come from false premises. They come from egalitarianist point of view, and you know, I just don't see how radical feminism and, you know, smash the state or smash capitalism is compatible with a philosophy that's emphasized on free markets and private property. Exactly. And let's say we all smash the state altogether, and then what are we going to be left with? They're going to be left with a bunch of leftists that next thing they want to do is outlaw a bunch of private property. Like, no. I didn't want to be part of this revolution. No.
Yeah.
But they're not going to leave you alone. That's not how their anarchy works.
Yeah, no, their anarchy is just See, here's
power.
The thing. People get on me a bit, but if I had to choose the current state of affairs or teaming up with the leftists and letting them have their world order, I'll actually choose the current state of affairs because at least there's some minimal protections for private property. At least I can put food on my table. At least I can, you know, have a comfortable life somewhat. You know, it's not Rothbardian anarcho-capitalist paradise, but it's
not full-blown communism, which is what they're asking.
Yeah, it's not like blood-drenched, starving communism, which, you know, if you look historically, communist regimes are brutal when they get in power to their political enemies.
Oh, yeah, those are the first people to go. Yeah, those are over. Oh, yeah, those are always the first people to go are the fucking political enemies.
Yeah, and the Spanish Civil War, there were Spanish anarchists, you know, Spanish left anarchists, and they, you know, I think they held on to, during the Spanish Civil War, they held on to a property for a while, and the first thing they did was they killed just indiscriminately of people who had basically had the wrong political opinion. And historically, this wasn't even condemned. This was actually celebrated as an outrise, as a expression of the victimized classes or rising up against their oppressors, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, and so these people, the leftists, are completely crazed and degenerate. They don't have any sort of standard. Everything with them is there's no objective reality. That's all feels. If you present a case against them, against their point of view, they'll just call you a racist and want to fight you.
Yeah, they won't refute you. They'll just yell at you and act like children, or physically fight you.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Kind of like in South Park. I'm PC, bro. I'll throw down.
Yeah, exactly. I'll throw down.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is.
Beat the shit out of Cartman.
That tough by themselves. They have to have like a horde of them around you to intimidate you and take you down. It's really getting to the point where I'm thinking Western society is going to become a zombie apocalypse. And I'm wondering if that's what all the zombie movies are about, like a leftist uprising.
Oh yeah.
I've compared it to
and they keep talking about all the diseases they keep uncovering in the Arctic because all the permafrost is melting and all these old diseases are going to come back. And it's like, oh, well, maybe there's an old zombie disease. Maybe that's where the idea came from. Maybe that's there's something to the whole zombie thing.
Well, I just think because once services aren't, like, think of it in a packed city, you know, even Vancouver.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to happen when basic services, when there's no water, You know, when these people can't get fresh water from their taps and there's no food at the store.
Exactly. Stuff that people things that people think government just sends to them. You know, it comes down from heaven. It's like they don't even think twice about. No, these are all scarce resources, and there's a whole fucking capital structure behind, you know, you getting it to the shelves and on your plate and in your house. And government's been fucking with that capital structure for at least 30 years. More than that, but really badly within the last 30 to 40 years.
And once that happens, these people are going to freak out. And I shit you not, when I say they're going to they'll eat us, I'm serious. They will resort to cannibalism because they're insane.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? Maybe the West Coast is the best spot to be because it's a little warmer. Lucas, good luck in Ontario when the power goes out with fucking Kathleen Wynne, that cunt. You're fucking selling off Hydro One or whatever. You're all going to freeze to death, and then people are going to be eating you. So, no, it's seriously, and it's, and you get back to this, you know, the libertarian nationalism or just the right-wing libertarianism. What I like about, because right, liberty is just the non-aggression principle. As a political philosophy, that's all it is. But the problem is that life isn't just a political philosophy. Life is so much more than that. And when you look at, you know, what encompasses, you know, traditional values that allowed for that, you know, liberty to, you know, grow as an idea and maintain and create civilization, you're right, it's Western culture, you know, Christian values, whether or not, you know, Christ was Lord or whatever. It doesn't matter. The point is that that's part of our history. And, you know, that needs to be preserved. We need lessons to learn from it. And we need to move forward because what I was saying before, yeah, you have this Islamic radical ideology that is so incompatible with the West, but you have Western civilization, which is now, I'm doing it. I'm speaking in the past tense now. Western civilization is over. So what exactly are we trying to uphold, you know, when we say, oh, well, it's incompatible with, the Islam thing's incompatible with what we're doing. Well, what we're doing seems pretty incompatible. You know, we have a secular religion. We force our views on everybody else through force. It kind of seems like the exact same thing they're doing. Of course, and when I say we, I don't mean we, I mean the state. I mean, you know, the apparatus of compulsion and coercion.
I think it gets to the point where we have to take responsibility and incapacitate our governments from doing certain things. You know, where social upheaval's coming, and I don't, you know, as far as comparing to the Western nations to Islam, it's two different things. Right now, we've got a power elite who are, you know, they're just trying to solidify their own power. They, you know, I think they know that some sort of global system is rising. You know what I mean? That they're, you know, there's all sorts of initiatives happening to kind of bring power up to the global level.
Oh yeah,
that's like the TPP, all this other stuff. So I think they know, you know, Putin, Obama, all these guys, they know that eventually there's going to be a more globalized system, right? I don't think they're in any hurry for it. It might happen in another 50 to 100 years, but they're trying to set themselves up as, you know, they want a bigger piece of the pie when you know, all comes
World
down.
empire. That's what everyone's ever wanted throughout history. That's the one thing. Kings, dictators, everybody wants a world empire.
Agreed.
That's it. It just goes without saying. It's stupid to think the times have changed because it's a democracy. We elect our leaders.
It's 2015.
It's 2015, Luke. It's world empire. It's 2015.
Yeah. It's just, but yeah, I don't think that, you know, it's Western civilization, the government, the current social order is going to fall at some point. And then I think the opportunity will be to create something new.
Well,
that's, you know, because look at it. There's no way we're going to achieve liberty through democracy.
No.
You know, as I covered in my film, the education system is promoting this hard left-wing egalitarianism. They're pushing it in the schools. They're pushing it in the universities. So you've got generation after generation churning this out. And, you know, you might, with shows like yours and mine and the stuff we do, we'll be able to wake up a few people here and there.
I'm waking up 8 people right now.
People to constitute a majority. So, you know, the question is, what do we do? You know, do we have democracies out? So that leaves waiting for the collapse and creating something new, or overthrowing the government or something. You know, there has to be, you know, democracy is not
democracy is communism. If you really look at it, it's just an insidious form of communism. That's all it is. But to get with what you may say about at one point we might need an armed revolution. don't you think that might make it worse? Is there ever
That's possible.
like if like I
But
know if I
I'm
were
going
leading
over
an armed revolution?
all the options, right? There's an armed revolution. Like these are the options: democracy, an armed revolution.
No, let's take democracy off that. I don't consider democracy. Maybe on a local level, you can like as
No,
a
it's
self-defensive
not a-
mechanism. But like the big national centralized parties and the big, we're going to vote for someone in Ottawa. I would say just ignore that shit.
Oh, I agree. It's not going to happen, but I'm just saying of possible strategies, right? Let's say possible strategies. There's.
I don't know. This is my show, and let's take democracy off that list.
All right,
okay.
fine. No democracy. Okay, that leaves government. That leaves overthrowing the government or waiting for the system to collapse or agorism. I'm not a big fan. Like I think agorism is a fine thing to do because we need options for when and if the collapse happens. But as an actual strategy for undermining the state, I don't think it's a very good one.
No.
If you are through agorism, if you're actually damaging the state, they'll just throw their guns at you and shoot you and bomb you or something, right? If you provide a great enough threat to the state, that they'll just use violence on you.
Yeah.
So there's that, right? So I think right now I'm thinking the best hope for liberty is a secessionist movement.
Yeah.
At least then you can dissolve government down to a more localized version of it, and then of course the problem with the secessionist movement is you might have a group of people like we want to go, and the government says no, you can't, no, you don't, and then that leaves again the option of violence. Do you shoot? You know what I mean? I'm not ready to go to war with the state, but these are the realistic options.
Well, I like the first option of just succession and decentralization, because that's really the way I'm. My option, I've been thinking about, how we have these guys who are like professional pickup artists. They go out. We need to train an army of professional libertarian pickup artists. Like, not to go out and pick up women and go on dates, but to go out and convince people to become anarchists. Like, how you have atheists that do this. They go out and they try to get people to question their faith. And so I say we build up like an army of these, highly, persuadable, friendly, and we're not brainwashing anyone. We're just showing them that liberty is the better option out of all the others.
Sure, that's a fine option, but do you actually think that you're going to wake up the majority of a population with an army of
No, just Western Canada, from Winnipeg to Vancouver, those major cities, all in between, and then they'll spread them out. And we got the internet. I haven't completely figured it out, but it does seem like a better plan than shooting. Because here's the problem with shooting: if I lead an army, I'm going to take the government. I take over. I'm going to be a king. Fuck the non-aggression principle. If I've got an army, I will be the most free market king ever. Okay, I will let.
I would still consider that a better.
It's a better option. It's better than democracy.
What we've got now. The thing is that you're not ever going to have here's the thing. I don't like until this. I honestly think that until the civilization changes, until you have like three. Because actually, I've actually been thinking of a libertarian dictatorship. I actually had this idea because I'm thinking all the other options are untenable. Democracy's untenable. Anarchy's not going to happen. What do? I think a libertarian dictatorship might not be that bad of an idea. Have at least for a couple of generations, have the public school indoctrinate the children into our point of view, and then maybe you can have anarchy. Like you need at least 2 generations.
That's
who were brought up with and educated with free market principles and a libertarian point of view. I would actually think Caleb as King of Canada would be a much greater.
Just Western Canada. I don't give a fuck about Ontario or Quebec. No, just Western Canada. I don't give a fuck about all the Eastern. I just want the West and Yukon. Maybe the North as well. We'll let them decide who they want to be with. But no, what was I going to say? Oh no, it's like
a bad idea. Caleb for King, 2016.
Caleb for King.
2020.
Oh, why wait to 2020? It's an armed revolution, right? Let's wait 35 years. If I do this now, they're going to call me terrorist. In 35 years, first we'll do my idea of the libertarian army of pickup artists. And once we've got about like 500 people, which I think is pretty, if we got 500 libertarians in Western Canada that are like, we like this guy, maybe that might be enough. But
you need like an army of I don't know, people like Tim Moen who can talk really good to people.
Well, that's the thing. It's like people, which just salespeople. That's what we got to do. We got to go into the college classrooms, and we got to go into all these different places where they like train people to sell products and be like, how would you like to sell this idea? That's it. It's just an idea. That's all we're
The
selling.
problem with that, Caleb, is you're assuming that people come to their belief systems through logic, reason, and evidence, when most of the time it's through indoctrination and emotion.
That's what I'm telling Lucas. We need the emotional thing. So that's the other. We need more artists doing liberty-oriented stuff because I think that's the key to the emotional intelligence is art. Like what's that quote? I don't remember who said it. I think it's Bukowski that said it. That a intellectual says a simple thing in a smart way, but an artist says a smart thing in a simple way. So I think that's what we need. We already have our old intellectual base of Rothbard and Hoppe and all those guys. So now we need a lot more artists that can help express these ideas to the masses that just like to consume culture. But so yeah, this all gets back to it comes to culture.
Long ago about an ad busters, libertarian ad busters.
That's right, yeah, libertarian ad busters. Yeah, we'll fool the left into thinking it's something like anti-capitalist, but it turns out to be all pro-liberty.
Only so they buy it. See, here's the thing, and that's a problem. I don't agree with the idea of couching things in leftist rhetoric because then it just becomes another shade of leftism.
Exactly, but that's why I wouldn't consciously try to make it left. Like if I were to do a magazine like that, if I were going to make it look all leftist, it'd just be out of my pure artistic what I want it to look like.
Yeah.
It
looked like it, but you have to say libertarian things in maybe a different way, but it have to be still libertarian. You can't like.
Well, I always like the obviousness of anarchy. I always use a lot of. I've been learning to use real life examples of anarchy because as anarchists we all know anarchy is just like basic human nature. It's happening right now. Everything here is anarchy. So it's just,
I don't know about that. Here's the thing. People generally, I think they like to organize themselves into, there's always going to be leaders and followers, right? There's always going to be people who want someone to tell them what to do to live their life, right? I think at least that just seems to be human nature.
Well, yeah, but that's not really, that's incompatible with libertarianism as like a philosophical idea. But I mean, just as pure anarchy, if it's voluntary, be a slave. I'm not sure. That's a good question. I'm not sure. I don't want to get into that debate, that blocking idea. Can you sell yourself into slavery? But that like the idea that there might be an organization that's basically resembling the nanny state. Oh, we'll take care of all your bills and everything, and you just pay us this much at this premium because we're doing all this work for you. And maybe you're stupid and lazy enough to be like, yeah, I love this. It's just a one bedroom.
I think a lot of people would really like that. To be honest with you. And I don't know, it gets into the Stefan Molyneux argument. Is it because, these people were spanked as children and
I don't know. I don't buy that stuff. I don't buy the Molyneux spanking stuff. Because here's the thing about spanking is, I was thinking this through last night. No, the other night. Anyway, it's, okay, well, with spanking is that, it's coercion. Well, so is sticking them in a timeout. I can't take you as an adult and stick you in a timeout. It just seems to me that some violence is justified when the person is being irrational. Like, so if I was trying to explain something to you and you were just being like, no, blah, 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 and you're freaking out and you're just acting like a child, at one point I'd probably slap you across the face. If you're not listening to reason anymore, you need to slap across the face. Children need that more often than adults, but that's not to say it's okay, and that should always be the last result. You should always try to reason with children, but because their brain is kind of developing, once in a while, they probably do need to, smack across the face. And to me, that's the same thing as giving them a timeout.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's best, if you cannot hit your kid, here's the thing. It shouldn't be a revolutionary, concept that maybe you shouldn't hit your kids. Yeah.
Violence is never a good thing. You shouldn't hit your kids, but I've met some kids that need a good smack across the face.
Yeah,
raised by statist parents, though, I suppose. We just need to get kids out of school.
I agree. I think public school systems are fucking horrible, and they indoctrinate you into toxic ideas, and just bad all around.
Yeah. So bad that when shit like Paris happens, people make their profile pictures of France flag.
Oh, I'm gonna have to fight with you there, man. I think again, the French flag goes back long before the current state. I think that they used that flag during the Revolution. I don't know. A flag isn't necessarily some evil thing. It's just, again, it goes back to the nation. I think I actually found the quote. Yes, this is a Rothbard quote. The nation, of course, is not the same thing as the state, a difference that earlier libertarians and classical liberals such as Ludwig von Mises and Albert J. Nock understood full well. Contemporary libertarians often assume mistakenly that individuals are bound to each other only by a nexus of market exchange. They forget that everyone is necessarily born into a family, a language, and a culture. Every person is born into one or several overlapping communities, and usually including an ethnic group with specific values, cultures, religious beliefs, and traditions. So I don't think there's anything inherently wrong about a flag. I think the problem is that the flag has been captured by the state. The problem is that this flag is basically the state uses it to try and synonymize itself, when I think it more accurately resembles the nation, not the state, or represents, the nation, not the state.
Yeah, I see that. My point was just the stupid people on Facebook doing it. They have no reason why. They don't have this kind of knowledge of France. I would assume most of them don't. But no, I don't know. Luke, you didn't seem like you agreed there about.
Well, it makes it's simply a symbol, and I guess it's whatever the people that attached, the meaning to the symbol is what it really represents. So sure, there's nothing nefarious about the symbol. It just mainly it is something that people. It is mainly used by the state, like whether it be. In school, when you got to stand up, it's kind of an indoctrination thing there, or wherever they do. It's basically a way of calling people into their, their tribal mentality. That this is our team with this symbol, and I guess they kind of do hijack the symbol because, like, I personally, I don't know as much about the history of that specific flag as Richard does, but yeah, that's basically all I have to say about that.
Well, the thing is, I find it kind of hypocritical when people who put black and yellow flags on everything are whining about people who were using a flag filter on social media. It seems like a little childish, and it's just seems like people want to feel superior and just use critiquing that as a way, especially when you see a lot of people who use the black and yellow flag and plaster it all around.
I just hate flags. I hate the Canadian flag the worst. Speaking of like tribes and the state taking over, we never really had that kind of culture to begin with. We were just a bunch of British colonies that weren't part of the American Republic. It was just kind of all cobbled together in the northern part, and it came together in 1867. And then we went through several different like British variations of the flag before we finally landed on the cultural Marxist maple leaf that we have today.
I agree with you there.
So I don't like our flag. I think our flag's bullshit. What kind of tribe, what kind of collective tribe are you trying to call on? Without the state, there would be no Canada. Like Canada,
I agree.
Unlike Europe, I see your point.
There's
in
no
Europe.
nation of Canada. There's no shared belief systems. I would say there might be pockets of nations. I would consider Alberta more of a nation than Canada. I would consider British Columbia more of a nation than Canada. But even then, I think if the Canadian government collapsed or dissolved, I think that you'd see. I think Alberta would stay pretty much as it is, but I think BC would be cut into two. I don't think. I think there are nations within Canada, but I don't think Canada is in itself a nation. There's very little uniting people in Quebec and people in Alberta, right? There's
nothing.
Cultures, there's values, their traditions. There's so much difference there that to tie them together with the Canadian flag is something artificial.
So, sorry to interject here. What would be like the definition that you're using for a nation? Like just so I can have clarification.
I read it out earlier. I can read it again if you want.
Okay. Yes, please.
The nation, of course, is not the same thing as the state. This is a Rothbard quote. A difference that earlier libertarians and classical liberals such as Ludwig von Mises, Albert J. Nock understood full well. Contemporary libertarians often assume mistakenly that individuals are bound to each other only by the nexus of a market exchange. They forget that everyone is necessarily born into a family, a language, and a culture. Every person is born into one or several overlapping communities, usually including ethnic group with specific culture. This part, basically. Some sort of ethnic group with specific cultural values, religious beliefs, and traditions, right?
Okay.
So that's the anarchy.
Yeah, shared beliefs.
That's the anarchy, though.
Heritage, too. I think a heritage is a big part of it.
Okay.
And I would say that's the anarchy. So that nation, the family, the culture, the language, And then the market exchanges on top of that. That's the basic anarchy that I'm talking. The anarchy that's always with us. It's like gravity. It's anarchy. And just as we do things that go against, well, they don't break the rules of gravity, but airplanes defy gravity for a little bit. Yeah. The same way the state does the same thing. State intervenes in the market economy. It's not exactly the same thing because there's nothing parasitical about flying around in an airplane, but that's a terrible analogy. I feel like I fucked this up even worse. The point being is that the anarchy that's just like basic, that's already there, that's here right now, that's that nation and market that Richard said. So we're talking about the kind of libertarian. I forget why I was going to bring that up because we were talking about it earlier. But my point being is that trying to sell people with libertarian ideas, you have to hide the word libertarian. You don't even have to say it's libertarian. You don't have to abide by the libertarian non-aggression principle. You could even just point to that history of nations, especially in the European tradition, where the ones like Britain that used common law system, because that common law system was kind of closer to anarchy than the democratic legislation that we have today, where it was kind of a bunch of lawyers and judges and these centralized courts and litigants having to pay for everything out of pocket as opposed to just relying on taxpayers. And it wasn't perfect because there were still kings and queens in the king's courts, but it was more anarchy than what we have now, which is a very centralized nation state. So trying to sell the anarchy idea to people, you don't necessarily have to dress up libertarian language. You can just avoid the whole libertarian issue altogether just by focusing on the nation and the market.
I think that's a fair way to do it. Again, I've become in my life. I've become less concerned about anarchy in my time as opposed to maximizing the amount of liberty that we can hope to achieve.
Anarchy. We're at the end. It's got to be anarchy. We've got such a big state now. There's no going back. I don't know. Maybe.
What do you think is going to happen though, Caleb? You think if all of a sudden everyone, if the state collapses tomorrow, these people are going to want anarcho-capitalism? No, they're going to look for something that fits with the paradigm in their head, right? The ideas that they've been indoctrinated into.
But I don't think the state's going to collapse tomorrow. I think it's going to be very slow. It's probably going to take another 35 to 50 years, and people are going to get poorer because there's so many inner contradictions with the state system. And as people get poorer, I think they're going to, a lot of them, especially right off the bat, they're going to be like, well, we need more socialism, obviously. We need more government. So it's probably going to get worse before it gets better.
It's going to get really bad, I think.
But it's going to get better because I think when people are poor enough, they're going to start rediscovering what creates wealth. Like, you got to think, bar owners right now, I don't know why I say bar. It's probably because I go more bars than any other establishment. But bar owners realize that they, there's a bunch of rules in place, a bunch of stupid licenses. There's some bureaucracy, city bureaucracy, provincial bureaucracy. There's a bunch of shit they got to deal with. But they're able to do it because they got a lot of customers coming in every day spending money. When that money gets thin, then it's going to be apparent how burdensome a lot of these regulatory schemes are and how there's a whole bureaucratic class living off the productive output of and I think that we're going to rediscover that. Like we're not like Russia in 1917 where we had none of this history of beforehand, and we have none of the looking at what the communists are capable of. We have all that behind us. We have a good history of Western civilization, and we also have what the communists are capable of. I think it's possible that, I'm not, once again, 35, 50 years, maybe even more. It's going to get worse before it gets better, but it will get better, and it'll be gradual.
I don't know. I think that the education systems aren't going to get any better.
No,
they're still going to be churning out, indoctrinated statists and.
I think they're going to become irrelevant.
I think what you're talking about happens is things will get worse because as things get worse, people will get more hungry. They'll become more dependent on the state. They will want more. The smart political leaders will play class warfare against the riches, haves and have-nots. I don't think personally. I just don't see it getting better without any sort of on its own. I think it's going to take a concerted effort, and I don't know how. Again, I'm to the point where I don't really think agorism is going to work because if agorism was going to do something, the government would go in and they would rob you. They would still have guns, right? I don't know. I think that right now the best hope is a collapse of the government, and then men and women who are smart and strong and intelligent can carve out a niche of like anarchy or a niche of like safety for themselves and their friends to try and keep the zombie apocalypse at bay.
Hard to say.
Can I?
Yeah,
okay,
go ahead.
So sorry, go on, Caleb.
No, I said go ahead.
Okay. So Richard, I know you're a lot of what you focus on has to do with like the leftist takeover and stuff like that. So how have the left changed the Western values and changed it to like what is their influence in changing Western values? How have they done it? And maybe there are similar things that we can attack, and like maybe there's things that we can attack in a similar fashion. Just pretty much like flip it upside down, because that's pretty much what we are compared to them.
Well, it's interesting. They seem to have, I think their biggest coup was the education system, right? We need to get, that is what I think is the biggest hurdle in our way. If we could somehow dismantle the public education system and create a parallel free market where our ideas were given a fair hearing, if it was just ideas, I think we could win. But they've got a monopoly on the education system, and particularly post-secondary. You know, you've got people like Walter Block in there doing good work, but he's a minority. Again, they've got like, and they promote these victim narratives of cultural Marxism, of political correctness, all these anything to kind of make people feel like that their failures aren't their fault, like their situation isn't their fault. There's these false narratives of history, really, where they focus on one thing. Say, like, for instance, North America, it's always sold as the big evil white people coming in and invading Native Indians. Well, there was death and destruction in that area, but it's not quite as black and white as the narrative. There was a lot of it was European nations fighting each other with their native ally, and they each had their own native allies, right? There were skirmishes. Here's the thing: when you have two civilizations coming together, there's going to be problems, and they also they gloss over the fact that the natives had wars with each other. They blame slavery on white Europeans. They neglect the fact that slavery existed long before there was the Arab slave trade existed long before white people were there. The African slave trade existed long before white people were there.
And who really ended it? Who really ended the slave trading? Who started?
Of course, Europeans. But again,
Abraham Lincoln. Abraham la 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 la.
But of course, these ideas aren't talked about. So it's really, I think at the end of the day, they have captured the narrative of history in a lot of very important areas. So, and I don't know how to undo that. That's why I think the best analysis I can come up with is just to hope everything goes to crap and try and build something up from it. Because I don't know. I don't know how to invert that. You know what I mean? I don't know how to invert the public education system and get them. Get people out of that paradigm and get people out of I guess the best thing we can do is provide some sort of free market alternative online for really, really expensive education systems, because right now they're going into debt slavery, like spending ridiculous amounts of money to go to post-secondary education. So if libertarians could create a cheaper market alternative online and have our ideas spread, that's a possibility.
And we have with Mises Institute, but also, that's the thing. There's inner contradictions with this statist system in education, where like it costs so much, and you're not going to get a job. That's why I say when people get poorer and there's no jobs, and like, I guess the government can provide jobs, but they're just you're not producing any wealth. It's going to make us all poor. So I'm thinking like a lot of people are just going to realize the free market schools are better. Because like they're giving us, and not just free market schools like, oh, we'll teach Austrian economics, like a school that teaches some kind of skill that you're going to need. And maybe they don't have all the proper licensing, and maybe they do have the proper licensing, but it's not as bad as these Queen's University and the University of Toronto and all these old school institutions that are now like you said, they're Marxist, and they're so expensive, and you're not. Like that's the thing. I think even if it takes them until they're 25 or 30 years old. Newer generations, I think, might realize that these state education indoctrination centers are indoctrination centers. Like, here's the thing. We all went through them, right? And we woke up. So
But
there
we're
is.
but we're the minority.
Well, that's the. We only need a sizable minority, and that's why I'm all talking about the pickup artists. We need to find the minority that we already have, train them to be salesmen and persuade people, and then spread them out as much as we can. Because if the state were to collapse tomorrow, or within the next week, or even within the next 10 years, we could have an even worse system. Because, yeah, you're right. People are going to be poor, and they're going to want government to do things even more. And it's going to make things worse. But if the government can just kind of, like, just slowly get worse, and it will just slowly impoverish us, and give us, like, 35 years to work this thing out. Because it's, all revolutions just end up making things worse. And I'm a prime example of why. But reformations, those are long lasting. We still have Protestant churches. We still, like, the Catholic Church is not the de facto Christian authority. It hasn't been that way for centuries. Well, maybe now under cultural Marxism, the Catholic Church is working its way back up there. Oh, you can't do anything. The Pope is close to Jesus. But the Reformation, I think, is a good analogy because like Martin Luther putting the tenets up on the board of the church, or the printing press. The printing press is kind of what started that whole thing. The people read the Bible, then they realized, oh shit, Catholics have been lying to us all this time. So
we do have the internet now.
We have the internet. We have the state's been lying to us about banking and pretty much everything. So maybe that's kind of the catalyst. We're going to live through another Reformation. Maybe it takes 200 years. Maybe people watching the archive of this show going, wow, man, those people were ahead of their time, man. But I'm optimistic. That's what let's say. I'm optimistic. Short term, I'm pessimistic, but long term, I'm optimistic.
Well, I'm just trying to think of. I'm trying to war game out the a positive outcome, and it just I don't see it because, like I say, I don't say that it can't happen, but I just look at the numbers. We're over. We're hopelessly outnumbered. And you say, well, you don't need a solid. You don't need a majority, but a dedicated minority. But when you've got a starving zombie apocalypse majority that have counter ideas, and that's pretty hostile. So I don't know. Again, I'm thinking, King Caleb. That sounds great to me, man. Let's do it.
Well, I don't. Well, that's the thing. If you get hungry people, depending on how hungry they are, I don't know if they decide they're hungry because the government's fucked them up, or are they hungry because of those evil rich people, the 1% hoarding all the food?
Well, it depends on the ideas they have, right? And right now, it seems like the idea, if the zombie apocalypse...
But only because they're rich. That's the thing. I'm saying my argument is that the more poor they get, the more free market they may become. So by the time they get hungry, they'll realize that it's the government's fault.
It's a possibility. I'm just wondering how free market are the people... Because to play your theory out, we should look at other third world country.
No, because we have Western civilization. That's what I'm saying.
But Western civilization is viewed as evil and racist and horrible and oppressive and colonialist and
by the people that are starving us. That's what I'm saying. I'm just saying that.
Yeah, but that's also by the people who believe, like the mass majority of people.
I think the mass majority of people are kind of stupid, though. They're not going to think about this rationally. That these are just ideas that are already there because of the culture, and that's what we're saying. Our job. And we're spreading these ideas, and people, they're getting poor and be like, well, we're supposed to live in a progressive society and democracy. Why is this happening? So maybe they will become disillusioned with those Marxist ideas. They'll see us and our army of pickup artists, and they'll...
Well, maybe we just need a charismatic showman. Let's get Augustus Invictus for have a tour around Canada.
Yeah.
You just interviewed him, yeah. I watched that. I listened to that.
So you're right. I guess all we need then is a few charismatic libertarian, what we call them, I guess pickup artists, charismatic showmen, right? We need some.
If we get about if we get 6 and spread them all around Western Canada. Here's the thing: we only need to find 6. The 3 of us right here in this room. If we're successful,
sort of acting classes, then so we can become more flamboyant on the fly and stuff.
Well, that's what if this works, and if we're successful with this pickup idea, American libertarians might pick up on the idea too. That whole New Hampshire thing might be breeding ground for these pickup artists that then go out in the country and spread these ideas. So it's like missionaries, and maybe that's how Christianity spread throughout Europe, was because they were kind of poor and they needed that idea of an afterlife and a reason to live, and it's just with the whole collapse of Western civilization here, people are poor, the whole Marxist idea is failing them, and they need hope. They need some kind of hope, and we've offered them hope.
There's something to be said for going out into poor, disadvantaged areas, evangelizing while you're helping them out. Because if you're giving poor people a meal, they might be more likely to listen to what you have to say.
It's true. That's that's true. Actually, there you go. Free market ideas. When the government fucks up the whole industrial food system, which is probably a good thing because it's disgusting anyway. Then, farmers markets and small-time farmers, granted they're still allowed to exist. See, here's the other thing. If government starts, outlawing private gardens, you got to think there's a remnant out there somewhere that, that's going to, at the bottom of their gut is going to be like, nope, that's my breaking point. Nope, that's not okay. You cannot ban private gardens. You cannot collectivize food. You cannot do that.
Well, you got a point there. As the government gets more authoritarian, more people are going to become skeptical of it, but then it's still a leap. It's still a long journey, we'll say, from realizing your government is corrupt and oppressing you to realizing the institution of government is flawed and is oppressive inherently.
Yeah, well, that's what makes this more of the big revolutionary thing rather than just a reform movement. Is that, well, it's the abolition of the state, kind of like getting rid of slavery and stuff. And Lucas has left us. That's all right. Oh no, I've lost my train of thought. He was my go-to guy. I look at him when I lose my train of thought, and he reminds me. Now I'm all lost without him. Lucas. Well, we're coming up to 5:30. You said you were only good for an hour.
Felt that I could probably stay another 10 minutes.
Okay, well, yeah. Tell me when you just got to go. But the way I see it is that people are going to get poorer. The government's going to become more aggressive, more totalitarian. And then there's going to be the vanguard that's out there trying to spread these ideas. There's going to be intellectually bankrupt cultural Marxists, because even though they do control all these centers of influence, I don't think they have the stranglehold over the masses that we fear. Like, they certainly do influence the terms of debate and what people's preexisting ideas are. But once, I do this all the time. I get in arguments with leftists and social justice warriors, and you get them to define their terms. If they're really intellectually honest, they can't do it. Especially if you're a well-spoken libertarian, there's no way around it, because we're speaking the truth. We're talking about something that's real, an objective reality, where they're just talking about their feelings.
Usually they just get mad and start swearing at me.
Yeah, exactly. So they either get mad and they swear at you, so they're lost cause, fuck them.
Yeah.
Or they really think about it and you've planted seeds. And I don't know how many seeds I've planted. I have a bad habit of not checking up on these seeds later on. And it is a bad habit, because if you want to be, successful pickup artists, you got to take her on more than one date,
You got to call back. You got to call back.
Yeah, you got to get a call back. You don't call back. She's got to call you. You got to get her calling you, okay? We got to get these potential libertarians calling us. Like, hey, man, what was that Roth name again? What was the Mises? Can you get what's the names of the books? So,
I don't know. I don't think these. Here's the thing. But you've got these radical tangents like Black Lives Matter and what else? These contingents that are getting really active, and they're really invested in this ideology. And I think it's going to be harder to basically get people out, certain groups of people out of it, because quite frankly, there's an incentive there. There's an incentive to be a victim group, because you get more attention, you get special treatment. Nothing's ever your fault, right?
Everybody loves being a victim.
There's a huge social incentive for cultural Marxism if you're a member of one of these victim groups, because then you get special treatment, right? And you don't have anything that in the world is your fault. You can blame any problems you have on some outside group, right? And this is where I think things could get bad. And this is kind of why I created libertarian nationalism, because I could see this is going to have a reverse effect. A lot of white people are going to be like, you know what, fuck this, and they're going to become more racist because they're like, you know, all these people who are black and women and all this shit, they fucking hate us. So fuck you, I'm going to be a Nazi. So no, I'm like, well, no. It's not about this. It's not about race. It's about culture, right? And anyone can accept these ideas. So again, it's like a safety net. And I think that, I think that there is a potential. I don't know if it's a conspiracy or if it's just bad planning, but there's definitely a potential for some sort of ethnic conflict. Because honestly, I think cultural Marxists, they're looking at white men as the new underclass, right? If you're white male, you are shit. You are the underclass. Yeah. And a lot of white males, understandably, are going to be like, you know what? Fuck you. So there's that potential conflict right there, which really would like to kind of defuse.
Oh, yeah, the state provokes conflict. Yeah, just by its mere existence. So yeah.
But can you? But the other thing, you really blame this on solely the state? You know, I think a lot of libertarians and how so?
Well, the state controls those educational centers you're talking about. This whole idea of white male privilege comes from, you know.
But they didn't. But it's not that the state, in and of itself, created these ideas, right? These ideas were created by actors outside the state.
But
they just ran to the state, and quite frankly, like the first like women's studies and feminist courses, which merged feminism with Marxism, I think they got some government money, but a lot of it was funded. The first courses were funded by the Ford Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation.
Yeah, but like the state makes all those things powerful. Like even the Rockefeller family probably would have died off if they were just normal, natural elites. They wouldn't have made it past the 20s or 30s unless they kept inventing shit. But the fact that they're still on top is because of the state system. And that a lot of these ideas have fruition is because of the state system.
Well, I get it what you're saying about the infrastructure, but I think to always just boil it down to that, sometimes you miss some of the more intricacies of actually of a more what I would consider more precise analysis. Yes, at the end of the day, the current government paradigm does have an underlying is the underlying foundation of everything, but there's but at the same time, there's more to the story than just the state.
That's true. It's just that the state is the mechanism to enforce those things. Like without the state, they wouldn't. Yeah. Sure, they could make up those things, but it'd be based on their property if we did have a property. And I don't need to. Yeah,
proprietarian society. Yeah, I get that, but I do think that I don't know. It's because a lot of times with ANCAPs and libertarians, if you try to point out anything that's a danger outside the state, they don't even want to acknowledge the problems in society that exist kind of outside the state system. Yes, the state is the underlying kind of foundational cause, as it it's the bedrock of our society. But these a state society can be run in many different ways, right? And there's not all states are equal.
No, but all states end up just have the same mechanism, the same underlying thing, and every state is just more power, more wealth for myself, for you. But I agree with you that there are ideas that are bad. Like the good and bad can be an objective thing, and there are ideas out there that are just wrong. But it's like I agree with Lucas here. It's the mechanism of the state. So yeah, I agree with you that there are bad things that are outside the state. But I think our focus should really be on the state. Well, it should be on culture. It should be on culture, because the culture of the people will eventually change the state. Like we can't physically stop the state doing what it's doing. It's just a collection of group of people that have the consent of the masses. So we have to change the culture of the masses. I agree there, but like that. But those bad ideas are given, force through the state. So I don't necessarily care about those bad ideas. Like sure, in a free society, I would make sure those bad ideas stay out of my community. But as far as like it's this social ill that's outside the state that I need to care about, I don't care. As long as there's a state, I won't it's something to concern myself with. Sure, depending on what the issue is, but the state is what makes it possible, and the state is what I really hate and want to get rid of.
Well, the thing is, if you can attack other if you can change people's minds culturally, you can affect the state, because we live in a democracy, and it's just basically the politicians, if they're thinking up policy, this is what they do. They see which way the wind's blowing, and they, you know, they jump in front of, you know, societal trends and claim to be leading them. So, you know, I think that's why it's important to influence culture, the culture of a society, as much as, you know, talk about the evils of the state.
Well, yeah, I would say getting the culture is just to see the state as the bad thing. It'd be hard for the politicians to jump on that bandwagon. Although, wouldn't that be great? Politicians,
I think some of them would.
I promise just to give up as much power as I'm going to decentralize. Like, I would love it, but yeah. Well, yes, the other thing, too, is if people understood what freedom and property and everything was all about, the two things, the state would wither away, or we would have this parliamentary system the way it's supposed to work. Like, the way, you know, I don't know what politicians would do once they get to Ottawa. There's nothing to do in like a purely like libertarian kind of society. But that's the thing. We would have a state and it would work the way it's supposed to.
Yeah.
Or it would just wither away.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there. It's just a matter of how do we get there and how do we maximize? Because like the way I look at it is, society is this huge barge, just slowly moving through water. And in order to get to where we want to go, we have to start to, because it's going in the wrong direction. So first, before we can get to the destination we want to actually go to, we have to stop it, turn it around. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And honestly, like, I don't know, it depends on who you're talking to, but you know, a lot of people will, if you immediately go to boom, Rothbardian anarcho-capitalism, people will just shut down. You have to kind of lead them there, especially if they're straight up like hardcore like progressives or Democrats or socialists, social Democrats. They'll just, and again, it's the most. It boils down to what you think is the most effective strategy of coming up with liberty. And I just, I guess I'm a tad more cynical. I think a majority of people are lost causes.
Hmm. Well, I think a majority of people just don't think about it fully enough. They don't care enough, or they just don't think it through enough. And I don't know. I agree. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better, but I think it's going to get better. That's all.
Well, I hope you're right. Like, who knows, right? I think it'll be different. I think there will be. I think a lot of it will be it'll be a socialist hellhole majority of places. But I think there will be pockets of liberty, and I'm hoping those pockets of liberty can be smart enough to understand that, you know, social democratic ideas are an antithesis to that, to their survival, and can continue and prosper on a propertarian model. And in that way, you know, we'll be able to, you know, say we're having a small community, but we're really, we're very productive and prosperous. We can afford some pretty awesome weaponry to develop some pretty awesome weaponry to protect ourselves from the zombie hordes.
Let's do that now. Let's all move out to the island where you are. And we'll get the army. We'll try my idea first, the army of pickup artists, but we'll just spread them all around the island, every stupid little town, every major city, and then we'll start building up an arsenal of weapons for non-violent purposes, and then that's what we'll do. We'll separate that little island. It's a pretty big island, actually, like bigger than Jamaica.
If anyone, the problem is this was it's like at army bases and so many socialists here, but I would love to see this place taken back. It's a beautiful area.
There are a lot of army bases there. If you could convince army guys,
that's a good idea.
We've won. Okay, fuck the other people else. Let's just convince the army and the police.
Let's go do. We'll go with our put some white shirts, you know, sleeves, some like For New Liberty in our pocket there, a pocket version of For New Liberty, and just start handing it out to soldiers.
Really cool.
Excuse me, sir. Do you have more time? I'd like to discuss our Lord and Savior Murray Rothbard.
Yeah, do you have some time to run Rothbard? Would you like to speak about liberty? And you start going door to door.
I'd like to start Hands Hoppa Hope.
Yeah.
Here's our
Hoppa Hope. Hope with Hoppa. Oh man,
whatever.
I can see them already.
I'm bad with names.
Yeah, like a oh, what do you call it? You know, the light coming up behind him, a halo and everything, and just like wearing all white. You know that quote, there can be no tolerance. No, see, that's the thing. Going all the way to Rothbard and Hoppe is probably not the best way to start the conversation.
Probably not.
Although, if they are Marxist, they might like Hoppe, because he was a former Marxist. A lot of his sociology stuff is kind of like Marxian. Like he takes a framework of the class struggle. Just clearly, it's the tax producers versus the tax parasites. But it is kind of Marxian. And so there might be, some room with, Marx lovers that are like, okay, Karl Marx is outdated. I tell people I'm a Marxist and they just laugh at me. And, I try to read Das Kapital, but there's like 4 fucking volumes. It's so goddamn long. And at the very last page, in the very last volume, he finally gets to define what class is, and then it just breaks off. And that's true. That's the true thing. But, so maybe we find those disillusioned Marxists, and we'd be like, hey, have you ever heard of Hoppe? Hope with Hoppe? So, because the whole...
Or Hoppe with hope.
Yeah, Hoppe, but with hope. Yeah, because the whole performative contradiction thing, too. That's such like a Marxian... Well, no, it's not Marx at all, but it's a great thing by Hoppe. It did start off as a Marx idea. Not Marx himself, but some Marxian came up with it. You know what I'm talking about, where to say anything, any non-libertarian ethical proposal is falsified by the mere act of proposing it. So you saying, oh, well, we need to go bomb ISIS. I'm going to go bomb the shit out of them. Like, well, that's a performative contradiction, because, like, in order to even make that argument, like, you have to presuppose the self-ownership of other people and property. And I don't think it's a solid argument. Like Robert P. Murphy, who's a smart guy, he's got an article critiquing it, and he makes some good points, but I still like the whole Hoppe thing of just, anything that's like a non-libertarian ethical proposal is just falsified just by the mere act of you stating it. I tell people that a lot of it just goes right over their heads.
Well,
fair enough. Go on.
Well, it's kind of like telling people, people are like, oh, well, prove existence. Well, it's like existence doesn't need to be proved. The very fact that you're saying to prove it validates existence, right?
Death. I don't know, Luke. Death is proved unless you can not prove it. Okay? I'm just going to assume I'm already dead unless you can provide me the evidence showing me the contrary.
Well, if you want to borrow ideas from Marxists, then then a libertarian dictatorship doesn't sound is fairly Marxian.
Yeah, I know.
Marxist,
it's a proletariat.
You can basically say, well, the state will naturally collapse into anarcho-capitalism and yeah, exactly.
That is always what the Marx always said, that like you have to go through like a full capitalist period before the communist revolution can come, and then we live in a stateless society. So like maybe that's the issue. Yeah, we have to go to a full Rothbardian anarcho-capitalist society before the communist revolution can come. Like that's why the whole labor unions and compromising with interventionism and a capitalist economy. You fucking capitalist pig! Like you're not a true Marxist. To be a true Marxist, you need to allow a Rothbardian society to take over, and then, only then, the dialectical materialism of history, you don't have to do anything. The individual doesn't do anything. It's just the material forces of history that work to create this communist revolution. So that's...
Maybe you can sell... Hey, maybe you can sell the communists on that.
I think I could.
Okay, do you actually want communism? Okay, you've got to allow pure, laissez-faire, because that's never actually existed. So come with us, we'll start this great, capitalist system that you can kind of work, and then we'll just materialistically just magically become communism.
Communist, stateless society, communist. We all share shit in common. Well, that's the thing. Let's say we have a full you got to go soon, but let's say we got to have full free society, and everybody just starts to decide sharing things, like an organic communism. How about that? I'll sell the communist on that idea. So that's how you have the communist revolution. It's not like a violent taking over the state. It's you go to like full capitalist market economy, and then once we're there, you just start sharing stuff.
Yeah.
Here's one for you guys. It's because you mentioned that the Marxists think that communism just naturally comes out of capitalism. We never had pure anarcho-capitalism or any sort of pure laissez-faire, but we had a much greater laissez-faire than what's happening now. Maybe he's right. Maybe because we're, the Marxists they're gaining ground. They're gaining frickin' ground.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering, it's a funny concept to at least
rework
mentally.
Rework Marxism. Go find some random quotes as capital that maybe could be like converted to some kind of libertarian class struggle thing, and just take it out of context and completely rewrite Marxism just through that Rothbardian framework, and then sell it. All the same words, all the same.
Well, I think what you need to do. You need to read. We need to read the Communist Manifesto and kind of pick it apart, create like an outline of it, and why it freaking is so popular. Like the first chapter, describe why the people that you are appealing to are the bravest and most best people who have ever existed, right? And then just try and I don't know, read it and then take point by point, because that book has been very influential, right? It's still like being read and influencing minds today, no matter how poisonous the ideas therein are.
Yeah.
But so I think a good idea would be to, if you want to kind of convert people, go through the Communist Manifesto and write like basically what it does and why it's so, and try and theorize why it's so popular, why it appeals to people, right?
Well, it's a religion. I think that's what Marxism is, a religion. It appealed to Gary North has written so much about this, but yes, I can't remember any article name, but he's got a bunch. But if you Google Gary North, Marxism, religion, even actually Murray Rothbard has at the end of Classical Economics, his whole history of economic thought. He's got the Marx is totally just tapping into that religious sediment. And that's what made, that's what communists are. That's why I'm saying, like, with our thing, making jokes about Rothbard and, going door to door. Like, if you heard the great news of liberty. But that's what made Marxism so, successful. I don't want to do that with liberty, though. Like, do you really want a bunch of libertarians that just believe in it because it's, like, a religion? They won't have rational conversations about liberty because they just believe it like a religion. They're like, liberty, liberty, liberty.
That's, it would be as much as that's not the ideal situation, it's a much better one than what we have now.
Because we got a bunch of socialists doing that.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not like like you said, not everyone's going to go with the logical, framework of it and basically buy it on that sense. People could buy it through, their emotions or whatever it may be, and they may not be able to, specifically detail it out. So I don't know, I guess
people
it's
aren't
better.
Intellectuals, I don't think. They're not interested. They don't have that inclination to be interested in ideas and economics and why things work.
Yeah.
They just want a kind of a quick soundbite that, resonates with them that they can kind of run with.
That's a lot of the public education. That's what's like the public education system has dumbed so many people down that it really is going to be hard to reverse it. But once you have reversed it, you probably will have a population that's relatively smarter than the one we have now. Sure, they're not going to get into every nook and cranny of economics or libertarian theory, but in like a kind of a free society with free education, like free market education, you would think most of them would have, just like how we know basic math, they would know basic economics. I don't know. But
anyways, I should probably be running.
Yeah, you got to go.
You guys.
Yeah, it was good talking to you. Thanks for coming on, Richard. Richard Heathen. Find him at youtube.com/deathmetalpatriot. He's got Liberty Machine News, also his DVD, Hidden Influence. When's the second one coming out? Do you have a date for that?
Oh, God, I'm working on like 3 different films right now. I'm working on that one, For New Fascism, which explores the idea of a reactionary fascist backlash against leftism, right? Because if you look throughout history, in all the nations where actual fascism rose up, they actually had a strong left-wing movements, and a lot of the fascist movements kind of gained popularity because they were a backlash to far-left communists. Like in Italy, Mussolini appealed to landowners because, like, the fascists appealed to landowners because because there was a lot of new entrants to the middle class in the previous generation. And a lot of these new entrants in the middle class, they weren't so keen about sharing about the collectivized property that the socialists wanted.
Imagine that. I don't know what the problem was. Like, I suppose I'll have to wait till the documentary, wait and see.
Yeah.
Anyway, Richard, thanks for coming on.
See ya.
See ya. Well, Luke, I think we've had a pretty good, we got to cut the show early today.
Oh, that's cool. I got editing to do, man. Fuck, I'm so busy, bro.
Oh, yeah, you're busy. Yeah, that's right. You had a whole thing going on. So, yeah, I'll talk to you later. You can get back to your work. I'll wrap her up here. So, sure. Luke the Pirate, thanks for coming on. Editing. He actually means looting. He's got a transport truck to go find. I don't know why I keep doing this. Anyway, Luke, thanks for coming on.
No problem.
And
peace, love.
Peace, love, and anarchy. Because it's 2015.
Jeff, yeah.
And to wrap up, the title was Paris. You can let Luke go if you want. He's got stuff to do. I'll wrap up this last 10 minutes on my own. Yeah, I'm cutting the show short today by an hour, but maybe I'll come back. Maybe I'll do an extra show this week. Do an extra one sometime on Friday or something. But actually, I kind of got to pee too. I've been drinking. I drank so many of these waters. What happened to? Somebody must have came and collect all my empties. I don't remember that happening, or unless they all just fell down somewhere. But yeah, I just drinking all kinds of water, so I really got to pee. But it's 2015. Paris probably wasn't a false flag, but it was, well, like Richard said, it was a conspiracy in the sense that they disarmed us, they invaded other countries, they created terrorists and armed them, and there was refugees, and it's just a giant shit show. They caused a shit show, and a lot of people in France died on Friday because of it. So if you want to blame anyone, blame the French government. Blame the North American terrorist organization that is NATO. And what else? Well, everything else I suppose I can get to next week. So assuming that nothing other crazy news doesn't happen next week, I had a whole bunch of stuff on Zoolander because I watched Zoolander the other day. So there's all kinds of great stuff. I'm rewatching SCTV because this is a Canadian show, but I'm not very Canadian. Oh, that's a good one. It's not very good. I'm not a very good Canadian because I don't like hockey, and there's no maple syrup here. I didn't even have a beer today, just water. Well, it's fresh water from BC, so there, stuff in Canadian. And the point being is that this show needs to be more Canadian somehow. So I invoke some some Canadian Icona. I think maybe I'll do an SCTV show where I just go through all the SCTV, some of the great sketches. There's a good sketch that, well, I'll get to it some other episode. Another episode about roads, because I feel like there's at least 4 or 5 hours I could do on roads. And, well, I guess that's about it. So, Zoolander, roads, and, oh, I didn't get the Richard about, I don't know, well, pretty much. Okay, so cool. Oh, and a dog. Here's the little, just for the points, we'll make him the thumbnail, just, so what the hell is his name again? Kaiser Rodriguez. No, that's what I want to call him. No, Kaiser is so soft. He's so soft. Here, let me just bring him here. Hopefully this doesn't fuck up the microphone. So this dog is afraid of everything, but he's cool. All right, so here's my bonus points right here. All right, look at this. Look at this. That's dog. That's a dog. It looks like, I don't know what it looks like for you. And from this review little viewfinder, it looks like a big black mop with a nose. But this is a dog. This is a dog. So this is what's going to get me all the views on YouTube. They don't give a shit about politics. They want to see, do we have any cats in the house? Are there any cats? Because we need some cats as well. If we can have this dog chase a cat, then I think that'll be good. We'll have some good hits for this YouTube. People are going to tune in. They're going to see this thumbnail, and they're going to be like, oh, man, this is about dogs and shit. Or they're going to be like, what does Paris false flag have to do with the dog? But I'll tell you what it has to do with the dog. The dog is he's an embodiment of evil. oh, she looked up at me when I said that. Well, that was his name, right? Doesn't Kaiser mean that ultimate evil or some shit? So that must be that's what the dog has to do with there's ultimate evil that's going on in the Middle East, and it came to our shores the other day. But well, not my shores, but somebody's shores. But yeah, I already went through my 2 callers. That's right, Kaiser. It's because it's 2015. So why do I have a dog at the end of this episode instead of some beef heart? Because it's 2015. I also have 5 minutes, but I have to pee. So we're cutting this episode short anyway. Might as well cut it short by 5 minutes. So anytime you guys are done looking at the dog, you just hit stop because I think I've ran out of stuff to say. I suppose I could just keep going and talk about the dog. Talk about how soft he is. Oh, so soft. So soft, guys. So soft. Squirming. That my last oh, look at this. My last video got a copyright strike because there was some song. So I used a Beefheart song. I used some clips from Orange Clawhammer, and I got a copyright strike because some douchebag used that sample, use that in some fucking dance remix, and then YouTube picked that up as, you know, being on my video, which it was not. I was using Trout Mask Replica original version. So this is bullshit. I tried to complain to YouTube, but they don't have a little spot where I could write. All I could do was select from, you know, predetermined answers, and none of those answers was what I wanted. So I don't know what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to have to. This is my end of the episode. Viewers like you keep this financially going. So what I need from you, 30 or 40 people, is some money so I can get the licenses. So I can get the license to Trout Mask Replica. I'm sure it's not going to be a lot. Who the fuck listens to Trout Mask Replica? And who uses it for, you know, commercial broadcasts like this? Nobody. Nobody likes to listen to it, let alone use it in commercial broadcasts. I once had a party and people left. They physically left the room when I put on Captain Beefheart. So I'm sure the license isn't that much. I'll get an official license, make it all official, so the next time YouTube tries to you know, get a copyright claim on me because some douchebag used Beefheart in a sample of some shitty dance song, and then YouTube thinks I'm playing the shitty copyrighted dance song, but I'm not. I'm playing the original Captain Beefheart song. To avoid situations like that, I'm going to get the license to Trout Mask Replica so I can just play the whole album without having to worry about the copyright. Okay, I think I'm done. We done? Done.